Alrighty. Okay. So thanks, James. Thanks for handing the session off to me. So good morning and good afternoon to all the audience that have joined us for this. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your time to dial in and listen. And as James mentioned, the topic for today's session is I think an interesting one. At least sounds interesting to me. The topic is lend your voice to your mainframe, an experiment, right? And I'll there's a special reason why I've called this an experiment, right? And I'm going to talk about that maybe in the second or the third slide. But just before starting, a very brief introduction about myself. My name is Subhashi Sarkar. I'm working as a senior product manager or owner, for the BMC AMI data for IMS portfolio of products and solutions, right? So I've been with BMC software for a little over 8 years now. I joined BMC in October of 2015. So it has been a little over 8 years, and I'm close to completing probably 9 years. Okay. So with that, let's start. Let's get into the meat of the session, right? So before starting, what is this session all about, right? Why are we even bothered about voice technology in today's world, right? So in today's world, voice technology has become very prevalent, right? And it's evolving and maturing at a tremendous pace. So from voice shopping on Amazon to routine and growingly complex tasks performed by some of the personal voice assistant devices or speakers, right, such as Amazon's Alexa. Voice technology has many practical uses in different spheres of life, and today I'm going to talk about how we can complete routine tasks on the mainframe using our voice technology, right? So what about lending our voices to our mainframes, right? I mean, we have seen Amazon's Alexa, right? We always lend our voice to Alexa, right? And get some tasks done using it, right? For example, maybe home automation, right? Switch on an electric bulb or turn on the smart TV, right? We have been lending voices to these amazing assistant smart speakers, in our day-to-day life. So what about lending our voices to our mainframes? That's possible too, right? I mean, mainframe is just it's just another server, right? It's just another computer. So we can definitely lend our voice to our mainframe. And today I'm going to talk about that, how we can do that, right? And why would you want to do that, by the way? Well, let's think about this situation, right? I mean, you are driving to work and stuck in a heavy traffic. So you will be late to office today. Upon reaching office, you will have to immediately run to a meeting where you will have to present an important report to the team, right? This is the situation you are in. And you won't have the time to generate the report after reaching office, right? So this is an imaginary situation where voice technology can come to your rescue, right? So think about logging into a secured app while on your way to the office and just placing your voice instruction to generate the report, right? So the voice instruction will probably submit the necessary jobs on the mainframe, and the report will be ready by the time you reach office, right? So this is just an example, but there could be several other use cases too. So during today's session, I am going to no, not this. So during today's session, I'm going to share about my experience working on a fun skunkworks proof of concept experimental project. in trying to get some routine tasks done on the mainframe using my voice, right? So come on. Sorry for that. But before moving on, and showing you how all this gel up together and work, let's understand what this project is all about, and what is it not about, right? So a few words of caution. So um, this experimental project can at best be implemented to help you execute some very basic routine tasks on the mainframe, right? This is in no way a production grade implementation. For that matter, it can't even come close to it, right? As I said, it was just a fun skunkworks proof of concept type of experimental project that I worked on, right? And shouldn't be treated as one. This shouldn't be treated as a production grade implementation, right? In any manner whatsoever. Now, complex technical aspects like voice authentication, which is recognizing only your voice on your system and no one else's, haven't been taken into consideration here, right? A production grade implementation of a similar project should probably also take into consideration some aspects of applied artificial intelligence and machine learning, such as NLP, natural language processing, and to some extent multi-language support too, right? Those aspects haven't been implemented in this experimental project. So with all those words of caution, why am I even talking about this, right? Is the question. Why am I talking about this then? My idea here is to get the initial framework built, and that was my initial idea, right? I mean, my idea was to get the initial framework built and ensure that it was functional. It was being able to convert one's voice in a natural language to text. So there is a very simple speech to text or STT engine at work in the background, which I'll show you. And then being able to analyze that text to extract meaningful keywords mapped to a command that actually then gets the relevant task done on the mainframe, right? So I am hoping that this experiment will encourage even more experimentation and interesting ideas and prototypes, including if somebody wants enhancements to this project itself, right? Making it more secure, reliable, robust, and widely implementable. So that's the overall goal, and that's what I had in my mind when I started working on this, right? uh, anyway, this was a fun project. I had some nice learning experience as well as fun, right, while working on it. Okay, so moving on. Now, we'll go through the sequence of steps that are required to complete the project. Now, note that I had worked on this POC project on my local Windows machine, a system running Microsoft Windows OS. So this entire project was carried out on a laptop which was running Microsoft Windows operating system. So step one is to create an HTML file. Right now, you can name the HTML file stt.html. That's what I did, or select any other name of your choice. The name actually doesn't matter, but for the sake of simplicity, I prefer a name called stt.html. So STT stands for speech to text, right? And the embedded text file over here, this file, all these slides should be available for viewing as I speak, or maybe after the end of this session, it will be uploaded to the website. So you can go through these files, and the embedded HTML file, the text file, contains the code that the HTML file should include. So you can go through the code. You can simply use this HTML file, which I've put in over here. And the next step, step 2, is to create a CSS file, right? So again, you can name the CSS file style.css. Again, it's a naming convention that I prefer. If you choose to use a different name, you have to remember that you need to edit the following line. This line, you have to edit the following line present in the HTML head element in your HTML file, right? So, you go, if you choose to use a name for your CSS file, which is something other than style.css, you just go to the HTML file, search for this particular code, and then you just change the name to whatever you have selected as the name, right? So you need to replace style.css by the new name that you have chosen to use, right? And again, the embedded text file contains the code. So the CSS file contains. So I've given the code that the CSS file should include, right? So you should be able to simply use the embedded CSS file. Okay, moving on. So this should be fairly simple. You have an HTML file and you have a CSS file. And then the third step is to create a Python script. Right. So again, naming convention, this is my naming convention. You can name the Python file stt.py or select any other name. And again, this embedded text file contains the code that the Python file should include, right? Now, at this point, you should create a new directory, and for convenience, you should store the HTML, CSS, and Python files within that directory, right? In my case, I had created a directory named. So this this was a long name. You can choose a name of your liking, right? So this was the name to my directory. I had created the directory on my desktop on my Windows machine. Now, let's go through a brief explanation of the Python script. Right. Let me do this. I think, yeah, what I have to do is probably have to. Let me just open the Python file what I'll do is, I'll just briefly uh, go through the Python script just to highlight the important pieces of code in this script, right? So the Python script uses Flask to host a simple web server on your local Windows machine, right? So that's what it does, to serve Python to a web page. So that's the entire goal of this Python script, right? It's not an overly complicated code, but that's what it does. It basically uses Flask and hosts a simple web server on your local Windows machine to serve Python to a web page. We have configured 3 endpoints, which are also called paths or routes. Namely, if you can see over here, the endpoints are, the first endpoint is this is the default endpoint, right? So this is the default endpoint. The second endpoint is this, the start TN3270 application session endpoint. And then there is the third endpoint, which is the list all jobs owned by my user ID endpoint, right? So I am using 3 endpoints. Now, what are these endpoints all about? These endpoints are like pages of a website, right? So each endpoint defines how the page can be accessed, as well as the function or method which will execute whenever the endpoint is called, right? So for example, if you take a look at this endpoint, when the control passes on to this endpoint, I'm basically calling this function, and this function does certain things for me, right? So that's what these endpoints are coded to do. right? So for instance, the same example, the start TN3270 application session endpoint, it defines the function with the same name, start TN3270 application session, right? Post, and over here you see that the method used is post. So post is the only way specified for the endpoint definition. So the endpoint will deny any other HTTP requests, such as GET, made to it. Now, the endpoint name, which is this, and the name of the function, again, for sake of simplicity, I've kept both the names to be the same. So the endpoint name and the name of the function defined by the endpoint need not be the same. I've just done it for the sake of simplicity. In our script, in this script, we use the same names just for convenience, right? Nothing else. Okay. Now, when a post HTTP request is made to this endpoint from our browser-based STT web application, which we'll take a look at, and uh, the in the previous slide, I talked about that HTML and the CSS file. Those were basically for creating our very simple browser-based speech-to-text web application, right? We'll take a look at those. So when a post HTTP request is made to this particular endpoint from our browser-based STT web application, the endpoint executes over here. If you see, it does a basic print, and then it executes a Windows batch script, and this is the Windows batch script that it executes, right? Um, it, and this batch script, what it does is it tries to start a TN3270 application session automatically, right? And again, a post HTTP request made to this endpoint, the list all jobs owned by my user ID endpoint, an HTTP request and a post HTTP request made to this endpoint will result in the execution of the batch script. This is the batch script that it will execute, and this basically fetches the list of all the jobs owned by your user ID from the mainframe, right? So these are the two simple tasks that we are trying to achieve using our voice, right? So the origination of the post HTTP requests made to the endpoints from our browser-based STT web application is controlled through your voice, completing routine tasks on the mainframe. So in other words, with our application, what we are trying to do is we are just trying to do two simple tasks, through our voice, right? We are either trying to open a Vista TN3270 terminal application session automatically, or we are trying to list down all the details of jobs owned by my user ID, right? So these are the two simple tasks that I am trying to do, and you can add to this list, and you can keep on adding to this list, as you want. But for the sake of simplicity of this webinar, I have just chosen these two simple tasks, right? And adding a new task is just probably, being able to make use of the existing infrastructure. That's it, right? So note that in this POC project, I have demonstrated two tasks, right? One is starting a TN3270 application session. And then the next task is being able to fetch the list of all the jobs owned by my user ID from the mainframe. Now, getting more tasks done on the mainframe is simply a matter of adding the relevant endpoint definitions in the Python script. So if you want a third task, you just add another definition for a new endpoint, right? Corresponding to that particular new task, right? And you keep on increasing that list. Okay, and finally, coming down over here, This statement, right? This piece of code denotes the IP address of your local Windows machine where your server is running, and the port number. So the IP address 0.0.0.0 tells Flask to serve files on your local IP address. In our case, it should be, HTTP 127.0.0.1 : this is the port number 5739, right? So this is where Flask will work to serve files, right? And we'll take a look at this, all of this, right? Also, now that we have taken a look at the Python script, it's probably, now that we are familiar with the content of the Python script, probably it's also a good time to take a closer look at the HTML file code. So I'll just open this file. It's a slightly bigger file, but don't worry, we are not going to cover each and every line of the code. I'll just try to talk about the basic functionality that's happening, within this HTML file, right? So we'll specifically take a look, at the code in the HTML file specific to our two tasks, right? That's what we are mostly concerned about. Namely, starting a TN3270 application session and then fetching the list of all the jobs owned by your user ID from the mainframe. So we'll take a closer look around the code that handles these two specific tasks, so that when you want to, add a third task or a fourth task or a fifth or a sixth task, you will be able to easily do that, right? So just let me see over here. Just a second, I am just trying to find out code. Yeah, over here, right? So this is task number 1 and this is task number 2. And this is not an HTML class, right? So I'm not going to talk about all the above HTML code. I will just concentrate on our two tasks. So the transcribed text. So when I say transcribed text is basically, and we'll take a look at it later. When we open our web application and try to lend our voice, through that web application basically captures that voice, and in the background, using a very simple speech to text engine, it converts that voice into a text, right? So that is called the transcribed text. So over here, if you see, what I'm basically trying to do is, the transcribed text is basically being stripped of all spaces, right? So I'm basically getting rid of all spaces over here. Again, for the sake of for the sake of simplicity, right? Just to remove out just to filter out all the noise from the voice. Now, there are two separate sections in the code over here, right? This and this, each corresponding to one of our two tasks. Each section of the code, so for example, let's concentrate on the first section. Each section of the code looks for a specific keyword in the transcribed text, and in case the keyword exists, a post HTTP request is made to the corresponding endpoint, right? So for example, for the first task, so for instance, the existence of the keyword over here, if you see, the existence of the keyword TN3270 in the transcribed text results in a post HTTP request to the, if this keyword is found, then we are doing post HTTP request to the start TN3270 application session endpoint that we already took a look at, right? So over here, if you see, we are entering that endpoint, and we are executing a post request to this particular endpoint, and then we are exiting from that endpoint, right? So that's what it does. And there is also a third over here. If you see, there is a third default section over here which prints the message. This is the message. Sorry, no relevant command could be figured out. Try saying something else, right? So this message is printed to the browser console when no intended keywords exist in the transcribed text, right? So for the first task, we are trying to search this keyword in the transcribed text. And for the second task, listing all the jobs owned by my user ID, I am trying to search the keyword job in the transcribed text, right? And if neither of these keywords are found in the transcribed text, then we print this message to the user saying that, hey, you are trying to do something which probably at this point of time I'm not being able to handle. Try doing something else, right? So just a friendly message to the user. Now, how am I doing on time? Okay, I think, yeah. So note that as you plan to add more tasks, a separate section pertaining to each task can be added to the code. And depending on the choice of the keywords or you can use one keyword or multiple keywords for a specific task, and their existence in the transcribed text, a post HTTP request can be made to the corresponding endpoint, right? That's how these pieces of code work, right? So adding a new task is not that difficult. It's in fact it's quite simple, right? The if statement condition, for over here, right, for each of these tasks, the if statement condition test of the default action section, over here. So for the default action, I'm talking about this if condition, if statement condition. So this if statement condition test of the default action section will also have to be updated by you with new conditions of the new keywords not existing in the transcribed text, right? So we also need to update this particular condition. So yeah, I think we are good with the HTML file. I think there's nothing more to explain. The rest of it is pure HTML, coding syntax, which we are not going to describe over here. It's out of scope of this webinar. So I'll now also briefly talk about how I have employed the speech recognition component or interface, right? Which is probably a very important piece to this entire project, right? That speech recognition component or interface, of the web speech API, right? So I'm also going to talk about that briefly. So one of the components of this project is a simple browser-based STT web application that we are going to look at shortly. And that browser-based STT web application uses the speech recognition component or interface of the web speech API, right? The web browser sends the user's audio to Google's servers to perform speech to text conversion. Now, since the speech recognition component or interface makes use of server-side API, an internet connection is needed, right? Now, while working on this project, I have also found out that the speech recognition functionality is not supported by all browsers, right? Let me tell you straight away. I've tested with 3 standard browsers, and these are probably the most standard browsers used by users all over the world. So I've tested with Firefox, Google Chrome, and Microsoft Edge. Now, what I found is the functionality isn't supported by Firefox. Only Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge provide the required support. And I must admit, it has been around, at least quite a few months, right, that I had worked on this project. So this is this status update is probably maybe, at least 2 or 3 months old. So I'm not really sure that whether, Firefox has also started supporting it. You can all, if you choose to work with this or experiment with this, you can obviously test that. But as per my last update, which dates back maybe 3 to 4 months from today, Firefox used to not support the functionality. Only Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge provided the required support, the voice support, right? Yeah, also I remember, I think, and this finding was probably as of so this is very recent, so I can check in my notes that this finding is as of 2nd March 2024, so it's very recent, right? However, things could have changed after that, although I doubt they have, right, within such a short span of time. And if things haven't changed after 2nd March 2024, they can obviously change in the future, right? I mean, the world of technology moves so fast. Now, the web application displays the message, sorry, speech recognition isn't supported by your browser when opened using Firefox, right? Let's test that. Why don't we test that, right? I mean, right now. So we have completed this. Let's test that, right? So this is the, on my desktop, this is the folder that houses all the files of my project, and the name of the folder is quite lengthy, right? Lend your voice to your mainframe. You can choose to obviously use a shorter friendly name, right? And this is the stt.html file that I'm talking about. Let's try to open it in Firefox, and let's see if things have changed. Okay. No, things unfortunately haven't changed, right? As we can see over here, sorry, speech recognition isn't supported by your browser. So Firefox still doesn't support this STT engine in the background. But as I said, things could change in the future, definitely. Now, moving on to the next slide, and I'll go to the slide show mode once more. Sorry for that. Yeah, we saw this, right? The web application, when opened using Firefox, displays this message. So we saw this. Good. Moving on. Oh, so this is the piece of code, and I'm not opening the HTML file once again, but you can check this at your leisure. This sorry, speech recognition isn't supported by your browser. This message is a result of the following piece of code snippet present in the HTML file, right? So this is the code snippet that does it, right? Okay, moving on to step 4. So step number 4 is to create a Windows batch script, file, a .bat file that automatically starts a TN3270 application session, right? So in my POC project, the batch script file is named again a very long name. I have liking for long names, right? As you can probably guess by now. In my project, I have used this name for the batch script file. Obviously, you don't have to use such a long name. And placed in the same folder, right? I showed you the folder that I had created in the desktop. So the batch script file goes into the same folder, along with the HTML, CSS, and Python files, which we already took a look at, right? So all those files are in the same folder, along with this batch script, right? Now, you could change the batch script file name. However, remember that if you decide to change the name of the batch script file, the new file name should also reflect in the Python script, right? Remember in the Python script, we are trying to call that batch script. So that name should also reflect. Remember to change that name in the Python script too. Also, don't forget to change the path to the batch script file in the Python script code, right? That's what I said. so in the Python script code, you have to change the name of the batch script file if you happen to change, if you happen to choose any other name. Also, you need to take a special look at the path to that file, right? If your path has changed, take care of that in the Python script. You have to take care of that too. Right. Now, if you are wondering what goes into the batch script file, that is probably out of scope of this webinar. But for the sake of simplicity, I have a slide at the end which contain different references to different technologies, documents, which I have used as part of this project, right? So if you are wondering what goes into the batch script file, you have to, just read my article, this article, right? You have to read this article, and then you can follow the steps that are outlined in that article, right? So that is a different topic altogether, and covering that is not in scope of our current session. But if you follow this article, you will easily be able to create that batch script file, which automatically opens a new TN3270 terminal application session for you. Okay, so that's it. Again, I've described about all of this. You have to, so now moving on to step 5. Um, Step 5 is to create a second Windows batch script .bat file. Remember, we have 2 tasks. So this is the second task, right? We have to create another .bat file that fetches a list of all the jobs owned by your user ID. Now, again, in my POC project, the batch script file is named this list all jobs owned by my user ID.bat, and placed in the same folder which we have already taken a look at, where the HTML, CSS, Python, and the other batch script files also exist, right? So all these files exist under the same folder, and this is just for convenience. Yeah, this is just for convenience. It's very convenient if you place all the files under the same folder. Now, again, you could change the name of the second batch script file. However, again, the name change requires the new file name to also reflect in the Python script I have shown over here, where to make the change. Also, take a special, do not forget to change the path to the batch script file in the Python script code, right? So, you have to take care of those things if you decide to change the name of the file. Okay. So moving on, the code that makes up the second batch script file is very simple. That's why I have included it over here, unlike the first batch script file, right? So as I said, in order to know how to create the first batch script file, you have to read one of my blog posts. And all the detailed steps are mentioned in that blog post. But for the second batch script file, which is very simple, this is actually the code, very simple 2 lines of code, right? That goes into your second batch script file, and probably, you already have figured out that I'm using Zoe APIs, right? In my second batch script file, right? So the Zoe ZOS jobs CLI command is invoked to fetch a list of all the jobs owned by your user ID, right? So that it's a very simple piece of code. So yeah. So with that, our setup should be ready. So if you have come up till this point, following all the steps, our setup should be ready, and we should be able to get some simple tasks done on the mainframe using our voice, right? So it is time for a short demo now. Enough of theory. Let's do some quick demo and see how these things work, right? Okay. Probably what I'll do is, since it's demo time, let's start working. So what I'll do is, the first thing that I'll do is I'll start this Python script. Remember our Python script, our old friend? We will have to start executing the Python script, which I'll do over here. All right, I'll just change directory. And then I start executing the Python script. Perfect. So the script has started executing. And now let's let's open our speech to text, very simple web application. Right? I'll open it with, we know it doesn't work with Firefox, right? So I'll open it with Microsoft Edge, my favorite browser. What I'll also do is I'll also open, sorry for that. I'll also open the developer tools console. And I'll tell you why, right? As I start executing these tasks, and you saw some of those print statements, right? In the HTML file. So I'm printing certain messages to the console. So as I start executing those two tasks, we'll be able to see some of those outputs over here. So let's start executing. Let's start executing our first task. I'll use my microphone. Open a new TN3270 terminal application session for me. And over here, you see, this is all being done automatically, right? So there you go. Just using your voice, you have been able to, open TN3270 terminal application session automatically for you. Now over here, you see, that we entered into that start TN3270 application session endpoint, and then we exited from it, right? And if you also go and take a look at the Python script output, so over here you see that, we are starting that TN3270 application session endpoint, right? So these are some of the endpoints. These are some of the outputs that we wanted to I wanted to show you, appear on the developer console. Let's move on to the next task, right? And how am I doing on time? Okay. Yeah, I'm almost done. So the next, list all the jobs owned by my TSO user ID. And over here, if you see, I have entered the list all jobs owned by my user ID endpoint, and it's trying to execute that batch script, right? We saw those two simple statements, and bingo, there you go. These are the list of jobs that it could fetch from the mainframe that exists right now under my user ID. Why not verify this output? Why just why not do a verification, right? Let's go to SDSF and try to see the list of jobs that are present. Okay. Yeah. There you go. Let's verify the output quickly. And you see over here, this is my TSO task that is under execution right now. So you see over here, this is active. And then these are the list of the other jobs, list of the 4 jobs that are in the print queue or the output queue. Right, so there you go. So you have been able to do some tasks on the mainframe using your voice. Let's test the other situation, right? So for example, if I tell this application to do something which it doesn't recognize. For example, hey, what is a mainframe? Over here, this is the message that you get, right? Sorry, no relevant command could be figured out. Try saying something else. And that's because I have just configured this application to handle only 2 tasks. And as I said, and as we took a look, as we went through the session, adding newer tasks to this application is very easy. So you can easily do that, right? So moving on, I think that was the demo. Again, as I said, this is the slide where there are references to different applications, documents over which I have used as part of this project. And now, if you want to go through a more detailed explanation and demo of the entire process, I have a link to the video. And I think, yeah, this is the link. So a more detailed step-by-step demo of voice controlling the mainframe. So this is the link to the video, which I have, and it's a more detailed explanation and demo of the entire process. Okay, so with that, I think I'm done, and probably a time for Q&A right now. So I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
And well, thank you there, Sabish. There are no questions, I'm afraid, so that's fine.
Okay.
So I'll say I have added your presentation to the website, so it's there for people to download should they want to have a look at it. And with that, I'll say thank you very much, and we'll close this session.
Okay, thanks, James. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot
Cheers.
to our audience. Bye.